Luka Doncic is an LA Laker. He made his debut yesterday versus the Utah Jazz, and the Lakers blew out the Jazz as they should have, 132 to 113. Luka Doncic was on a minutes restriction. JJ Redick said he was only going to play him about 30 minutes tonight to get him to ease him back into the lineup because he hasn't played since Christmas. And in 24 minutes, he had 14 points, 4 assists, 5 rebounds. He shot 1 for 7 from three, 5 for 14 from the field. But again, he's been out for a little less than 2 months. So the shooting struggles were bound to happen. Again, he's got to ease himself back in, and he's with a new team, new situation. Again, that trade of him getting traded from Dallas happened not even a week ago. So he's got to ease himself back in. But the thing that I noticed with Luka, especially in that first half, Luka didn't look very comfortable. And again, he is in a new situation and he will adapt and adjust to the things that's going on here. But Luka looked like he didn't want to get in the way. And I understand that, right? You're coming to a situation with LeBron James, even though he is not the same player that he once was, he's still LeBron. He's still a top 15 to 20 player in the league. He's still dominant. Tonight, he even had 24, 7, and 8. He did have 7 turnovers, which we'll talk about later. But Luka's got to be able, even in his return, again, we'll cut him some slack, but I really want to see Luka still being that guy that demands the ball. Again, if you are a real Lakers fan or a Laker watcher, you should agree that this team should be Luka Doncic's team. Now, should LeBron just take a complete back burner, not have the ball, and just be like a corner sitter? Absolutely not. You don't want that from a guy still as great as LeBron. But Luka should have the ball in his hands most of the time. I really want Luka to be the one that is developing plays, is setting guys up, and is getting himself comfortable. Because like he said, he did not look that comfortable. He was a little nervous. He's got some pains to go through, but again, we really want to see him with the ball. And like I said, LeBron had 7 turnovers. Luka only had 1, but one of the things that I'm worried about with this is that with 2 pass first guys or guys that are great at finding their teammates and almost get double digit assists every game, I'm worried that how bad these turnovers are going to be, because having one guy like Luka getting a bunch of turnovers for the team, but nobody else is fine. We've seen that with a bunch of people. James Harden during the Rockets was really the only person that was ever touching that ball, and he averaged a bunch of turnovers. I mean, even with lesser players like Cade Cunningham on the Pistons, that's pretty much what he's doing. LaMelo Ball, Trae Young, these guys all average a bunch of turnovers. But with 2 guys that are like LeBron and Luka, who play somewhat similar to each other, I'm really worried if these turnovers are going to cost them, especially since this still isn't the greatest team. And now, obviously, we saw the other day that the Mark Williams trade and Dalton Connect trade got rescinded because Mark Williams' physical wasn't good. He failed part of it, and the Lakers sent it back. And because it was after the trade deadline, they cannot adjust that trade. They can't make any changes like we do normally. So they just completely had to send it back. And as of now, we saw that the Hornets are trying to contact the NBA to dispute it or change something. I don't really know where that's going to go, if anywhere. But with this team not having really Mark Williams, and again, his health, even if he was on the Lakers, was still a big question mark. it's not a great defensive team. I mean, Jackson Hayes is going to benefit the most out of this, out of anybody on the team. He was 6 for 6 tonight, and he just caught straight lobs. He was sitting in the paint the whole game. He got the first 2 plays of the game. It was a pass from LeBron that was an alley-oop, and then a pass from Luka that was an alley-oop back to back. So Jackson Hayes is really going to benefit from this, but we're also going to need him to step up a little bit to provide some interior defense. He did have 3 steals and a block this game just by kind of being the presence in there. And again, we should take this with a grain of salt because it's the first game with Luka. He hasn't played in a long time, and it was versus the Utah Jazz. Now, a win is a win, but again, this is really going to be a big deal when we see the Lakers go up against some playoff teams, some real competition. They play the Jazz again on Wednesday, so I guess we'll see how that goes. And they have a pretty easy schedule for the next couple games, playing the Hornets next. And then on Saturday, they do play the Nuggets. So seeing how that defense will be versus the best center or best player in the league, we're going to see how it's going to work. Hopefully everybody is healthy for that game, and we get to see really what can hopefully develop between them. But it might be shaky. I know we said this at the Hoops All In main channel. We had a whole episode about talking about how this team is going to look, and that was before the Mark Williams trade happened. But my question that I have is, what is the best lineup to put around Luka and LeBron when you are still out there? You know, I assume that, like, to close the games, what is that lineup going to look like? I assume we're still going to have Reeves in playing the shooting guard most of the time. I mean, Jackson Hayes has to stay in there. But for that, I guess that small forward, power forward spot, do you really want to put all defense because you have 2 super scoring options like Luka and LeBron, and you put like a Jared Vanderbilt, who again really doesn't give you much offense? He's not a great shooter. He doesn't get the ball much he's not a creator, obviously. Or do we want to put in a guy that can create a little, like Rui Hachimura, that can maybe hit down a shot or 2? Or do we want to put a guy that's a little bit streaky as well with Dorian Finney-Smith? Or are we going to just run small, maybe forget Jackson Hayes so we can switch everything, have Vanderbilt and Rui? Or what are the Lakers going to do, I guess is what I mean, to close out games? Because as many times as we said, the defense is going to be painful to watch with Luka and LeBron most times. I just don't know what you do, because you want to give a guy like Luka and LeBron as many shooters as you can because they are such good creators. But again, you also want to give them the best defensive pieces to succeed, because again, most time Luka's definitely not going to be on a number 1 option if he has any say so about it, unless he gets switched on by a pick and roll. Or sometimes you don't want to tax LeBron by doing that at 40 years old. You should have a guy that needs to do that. So I guess my thing would be, you leave Luka, you get Luka, Reeves, LeBron, Dorian Finney-Smith, and probably Jackson Hayes. And depending on the team, you take out a Jackson Hayes and you put in a Jared Vanderbilt if you're playing a team that has like a center that stretches the floor, is a shooter. Like if you're playing against the Celtics, you should probably have like a Vanderbilt in instead of Jackson Hayes, because Porzingis is such a roamer and will stay on the 3-point line or the mid-range area and not really affect you as much down on the block. But if you're going against like a Joel Embiid or even a Jokic, I would definitely have a Jackson Hayes in there to provide some defensive effectiveness as much as he can give you. And this game versus the Jazz, again, maybe shouldn't be the telltale story, again, with Luka being limited and this being a blowout to where the guys didn't have to play in crunch time. But I think that this Luka and LeBron tandem is going to work a little bit better than it seemed like on paper. People always talk about all the time with overlapping skill sets. They talk about Phoenix Suns with Durant, Booker, and Beal, who are all, I want the ball to get to my spot, hit you in the mid range, or even with the how people would talk about the Celtics with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum early on. They're two ball dominant wings who play similar. They want the ball to get to their spot as well. I think that the overlapping skill set of Luka and LeBron is going to work out because of how unselfish they are and how willing they are to get their own when they need to, like in a crunch time, or to take a game-winning shot. We've seen in the past that as clutch as LeBron is, sometimes he does defer to pass the ball out, and instead of hitting, Rui Hachimura or even an Austin Reeves on the corner or at the top of the key, you're going to be hitting Luka Doncic, who just averaged 34 points a game last year and was third in MVP voting. So I really think that this tandem of Luka and LeBron is going to work perfectly fine on offense. Again, offense only. The defense, I don't think it's not going to be something that anybody should look forward to. I think teams will. I wonder what teams will do in like a crunch time situation where they are both on the floor, or even in the second quarter when they're both on the floor together. What teams will do, how they will scheme to try, and if they will attack Luka and force help, or if they will, or force the teams to help Luka to get by someone. And again, Luka's not the worst defender in the league. He has a big frame. He can, he's not going to get necessarily bullied in the paint if he has a bigger guy on him. But those smaller, quick guys are the guys that like to isolate. We've seen in the past that Luka just really, he didn't give much effort, even in the finals where he was on the biggest stage. He really didn't try, to be a good on-ball defender, and maybe he just isn't, but it also looks like it's the effort more than anything than just, oh, I can't defend or I won't, because again, he's not small, he's not short, he's not this super, guy who can't move. He's not the most athletic person in the world for sure, which we've seen, the Dallas Mavericks talk about this whole week about, the trading him thing and not being in great conditioning. But I really think that I don't know what they're going to do in that situation. If they do keep a lineup where even Reeves is not the greatest defender in the world, he'll try for sure. But that's why I said I really think you need to put, you have to have Dorian Finney-Smith and Jared Vanderbilt in to close the games, and I wouldn't be upset about it. But again, you do want to also have a lob threat and a big guy in there with a guy like Luka and LeBron who will throw the alley-oop most times if they see it. We saw with the Mavericks last year in the playoffs, I believe they were doubling teams' alley-oop attempts throughout the whole playoffs, and when they got to the finals, the Celtics really took that away, and we saw that they didn't get many alley-oop attempts, and it really hurt them. So that's why I think that Luka and LeBron will work together. But it really is unfortunate that the Mark Williams trade did fall through after the trade deadline, because now you can't really do anything. You can go in the buyout and find someone, but again, whoever you find in the buyout, whether it's like Boban, which we heard one report about. How many minutes is Boban playing for you? No, I would certainly hope not more than 10 to 15 minutes a night, especially in the playoffs. And God forbid if Jackson Hayes has to miss some time. I mean, I don't even know what you do. I mean, LeBron and Luka are big players, but I mean, if you're just not going to have a center out there, then I think it's going to be a rough time for the Lakers. Dude. And I guess the big question that everyone is asking or is wondering is, are the Lakers contenders this year? No, I don't think that they are contenders. But I also don't think that a team seeing them in the first round, whether it is a OKC or even if they are like stick to where they are with the 5 seed, if they're playing the Nuggets, which I think is what the matchup would be as of now, I don't think the Nuggets would want to just say like, oh, we're the higher seed or we've got home court advantage, and we've beat them in the last 2 playoffs, because obviously this is completely different. Luka is a different animal, and putting him alongside LeBron and in a new situation, even though the situation he was in was obviously great with them just making the finals, I don't think any team wants to see them in the first round. And that, I think, has always been the case. But even now, I think that the Lakers will need at least an off season or even the next trade deadline too, to really get themselves, the team that they want. Because again, this was a deal that just happened out of nowhere at the trade deadline too. It'd be one thing if this happened, during the summer after the finals and everything, when a lot of players are free agents or there's a lot of trades happening there as well, and you have time to build a team. But when you do this at the trade deadline, you're really you're kind of just rolling with what you have, because you can't just flip your entire roster. And some players aren't, flippable either. You sign them in the last off season, or, you just can't find a suitor that wants to take them or gives you what you want for them. So I think the real time that this Lakers team gets dangerous is next year, the year after. And who knows with how long LeBron is playing, who knows if this is going to encourage him to play longer, or if he still is going to retire in the next 2-3 years, as people suppose. But I think this year I wouldn't bet on them making any real noise. Could they win a first round matchup? Sure. Could they maybe even get could they even get a win in the semifinals? Sure. But I wouldn't bet on them making it past the conference finals. I do think that the West has a lot of great talent, and that the Lakers just aren't ready because how this team was put on the fly. So